Mr. Levy Ndou. Very good afternoon to you, Levi.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers at home.
Look, Levi, historic elections for the first time in decades for Zimbabwe today. Of course, I think the most notable thing there is the fact that Mugabe's name is not on the ballot.
Quite historic, you know. A lot of Zimbabweans who have grown to become adults have only known Zimbabwe to be having only one leader.
Yeah.
And that was President Mugabe. And over the years, it has always been ZANU-PF being led by the same President Mugabe. And indeed, you know, after a very, very long time again, the ballot won't be having the face of former President Mugabe. Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, these are historic elections because you have got the opposition that seemed to have gathered sufficient support on the ground. And what would be the question, which will be determined by the results, would be as to whether what we see in the rallies during the campaigns would actually be translated into votes. Because, you know, there are issues that will relate to a voter's role. People can go and attend a rally whilst they're not registered voters.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking of that, I mean, Levi, what do you make of the fact that it's just under 6 million people that have actually registered to vote out of such a huge population in Zimbabwe?
It should be a serious point of concern.
Yeah.
My other serious concern is that maybe some of the citizens there felt that, well, it's not necessary to vote because there has been complaints about vote rigging, a number of issues that will relate to unfair treatment of the voters. But also at the same time, what becomes a very big worrying factor for me is that we have got a lot of Zimbabweans that are outside Zimbabwe due to the political and economic situation, and they can't vote.
Yeah.
And I think these are the people that are mainly affected by the situation in Zimbabwe. And for me, they should have been given sufficient chance to go back and exercise their right.
You know, Levi, it was actually quite shocking that South African Home Affairs even deployed extra officials at Beitbridge border, expecting that there should be a huge influx of Zimbabweans going back home to make that crucial vote. But it just seems the numbers were way under.
I watched that in the morning, and I was quite not happy that a lot of Zimbabweans couldn't go back home and
But what
vote.
do you think is the reason? What do you think is the mindset of those that didn't necessarily want to go home, besides the fact that they think it's a rigged election?
I think firstly it's historical. There might be those who are saying that we've been voting for a very, very long time. And the results will always not favor us. And based on the complaints that have been raised by members of the opposition. And you'll remember the period in which MDC declared themselves as the winner, and everybody knew that MDC had actually won. Then there was a formation of a government of national unity. And I think also another aspect will be that some Zimbabweans who are not in the country are saying those that are at home would actually exercise the right on our behalf and do the right thing. And you cannot trust the people that are not there. And, you know, a vote is a very, very important right that citizens have. Zimbabweans fought for this right for a very, very long time. And I think they need to exercise this right in order for them to bring change. Change, whether change is for the MDC or change to allow the ZANU-PF to continue because Mugabe is not there, that is what the Zimbabweans themselves will provide as an answer to us.
Your quick comment on Mugabe's utterances yesterday about who he's going with and the fact that he was tormented by his fellow peers.
Well, for me, that is a clear indication that former President Mugabe is still not happy with the manner in which he was removed from power.
Levi.
He is very angry with ZANU-PF. And I think it's also important to look at the events why he was actually removed from power, but I think for now it's not necessary. But the point is that former President Mugabe is not happy that he has been removed from power and is very, very angry with his former party, the ZANU-PF. But if that has a huge impact on the voter turnout or as to whether it's going to influence Party A or Party B, that still has, we still have to wait and see how the voters themselves are actually.
So you don't think Mugabe is a big factor in these elections, Levi? Because there has been word that he still enjoys a lot of support within the ZANU-PF, and he might possibly be taking those voters alongside with him to the MDC.
There's an aspect we need to look at, which is that there are people who have actually decided to vote for ZANU-PF until they die.
Yeah.
And there are people that are available
Loyalists,
to go to other parties. And whatever he says might not make an impact, because everywhere you have got your own traditional support base. People who don't care whatever, whoever says what, they're actually going to move with their party. But also, you would still have people who would say, our hero is Robert Mugabe, and whatever he says, we're still going to follow that.
You know, Levi, you spoke earlier about the opposition parties, namely here the biggest two is, of course, ZANU-PF and the MDC. Let's look at the MDC. I feel that the ZANU-PF has been over-advertised. Let's talk about the MDC. What are they bringing to the table should they take the polls?
Well, I think if you look at their manifesto, they are putting an emphasis on the economic recovery. And
well, that's an obvious one, Levi.
Yes, and obviously what they are emphasizing is that they are going to elevate, to ensure that there is poverty alleviation. They need to attract investors so that they should be able to create jobs and make Zimbabwe a more prosperous country. But another aspect that I like about the MDC is that even though there were factions, I know that you have got the MDC Alliance and the MDCT. The MDC by Chamisa now seem to be well organized, and it has actually gone outside the cities.
Yeah.
You actually find candidates of the MDC even in the rural areas, which was the former stronghold of the ZANU-PF.
True.
Now, one would say that the manner in which ZANU-PF had actually prepared for these elections, it gives them an edge to say we can be able to form a government.
Let's look at their reforms and policies post the elections. Do you think they are the right ones to take Zimbabwe forward to a global stage?
When you campaign for votes and when you're in government, those are two separate issues. Yes. And politicians will say whatever they will love to say, as long as at the end of the day they have to get the vote.
Promises, yes.
There is a huge work that is supposed to be done in Zimbabwe. Building the economy, ensuring that the investors have got confidence in Zimbabwe, and also ensuring that the structures of government are functional.
Absolutely.
And everybody has got trust in the structures of government. And that is the biggest responsibility that the new government has to bring in, if the MDC has to take over. Another area of concern would be, which for me doesn't make too much sense, would be there are views that says that MDC has got a team of young people that are not experienced. But also at the same time we'll say, what is it that Zimbabweans got from the experience of ZANU-PF?
Yeah.
Because also, if the experience of ZANU-PF did not bring in change in Zimbabwe, obviously now you'll actually need or opt for new blood. And if you look at the caliber of the people in the MDC, you have got very young people.
Yeah, well,
they've got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think that is where the hopes of most Zimbabweans, especially young people, would actually fall.
Absolutely.
But the biggest question is, are they registered as voters? Because if you look at the queues there, I've actually seen a lot of older people, and I'm not seeing young people who have been filling the stadiums for MDC whilst they were conducting their election campaigns.
Levi, do you feel that there was anything different in terms of the ZANU-PF election campaign this time to say, look, this is why we are different this time without Mugabe, and this is why you should vote for us?
For me, what ZANU-PF has tried to do was to try and distance themselves from former President Mugabe. They did not want anything to do with former President Mugabe. And also at the same time, what ZANU-PF tried to do was never to mention anything about the opposition. What they were focusing on was to say, this is the new ZANU-PF. We have actually changed. We have got the potential to bring in new change. All the problems that happened in Zimbabwe in the past 30 years all these problems came as a result of the leadership of Robert Mugabe. And that is exactly what ZANU-PF has actually done. They've isolated them from Robert Mugabe.
But Mugabe is blaming the G40 leaders, saying that he was duped into taking decisions by those people. He did not intend for the country to go into the ruins that it is now.
Well, the Zimbabwean problem did not only start 2 years ago. Problem started a long time ago, and President Mugabe has been in power. And those that are in the leadership position in ZANU-PF now are saying that we were not given space to participate in decision making. And to them, for me, they are saying that Mugabe has been an autocratic leader. He did not give them space to participate in decision making. And unfortunately, that is what he's saying. But one other aspect that we need to look at is that when President Mugabe was removed from power, there were a lot of Zimbabweans who were marching in the streets of Zimbabwe were saying that it is time for Mugabe to go. Now, there's a difference whether they were saying Mugabe should go or ZANU-PF should go. But then they celebrated when Mugabe had actually left office. Now, if indeed they wanted ZANU-PF to get out of power, that is what we're actually going to witness come the 4th of August.
Levy, I hope you can stay here so that we can deliberate further on the Zimbabwean elections. That is political analyst Mr. Levy Ndou giving us a perspective of what, of course, the elections, what we can expect from the elections out in Zimbabwe.